Yes.
All right, I'm gonna let folks in. Good evening, fellow art lovers. I am here tonight with Daniela Puliti. I'm Carolina Wheat, and I'm an Artfare curator, artist liaison, and I'm really excited to have everyone here tonight to talk about Daniela's work. And we will just begin with, hi, how are you? Where are you at right now, Daniela?
Hello, I'm in northern New Jersey, and I'm at home because technology was not working for me in my studio.
Well, that's all right. We'll get things together. Just getting some of these things settled here. Well, what have you been doing during quarantine and lockdown? I know we're talking about the fourth spike and all this stuff, but were you able to get to your studio during, or were you making work during, this introspective time that we all had last year?
Well, I actually had pre-pandemic moved my stuff home and gave up my studio, which that turned out to be, I guess, a blessing in disguise. So I didn't have to like worry about how am I going to still pay my studio rent and not use the space. And like, I don't have to worry about like moving all of my stuff home, in the middle of the pandemic. It was already, sometimes things happen and you don't realize in the moment why they're happening. And you're like, oh, okay, like the universe is paying attention and has my back. So I was already like working from home, making smaller work because of a confined space.
Yeah. Yeah, we all kind of had to adjust, huh? So your work got a little smaller, just based on just the lack of space. And so is that, just kind of digging right in? I know you make larger scale textile based, fabric based installations. And I noticed in your Artfare profile that there's actually some smaller pieces of the hangers. Are those brands making new?
No, the hangers have been part of my practice for a number of years. I'm not going to even count them. That's sort of been my, like, I guess, a side project, because my installation work is so large and intricate and time consuming. I need something to just like a drawing to just get some energy out. And so I use those, as just a way to get like some ideas. I keep a note on my phone because they're text from things that I overhear or in conversation that I take out of context or just like a passing thought. And so I keep a running tally on my phone, and I'll have a couple of the hangers prepped and ready to go to get stitched. And I just like, okay, if I'm in the mood to make one, like do a little matchmaking of like what text goes with which patterned ready-made hanger.
And so that's been continuing a part of your practice, and certainly with the connotations of the hanger in relationship to legal and safe access to abortions for women. I'm assuming your strident feminist self is really exemplifying that within those works. What possessed you to begin making those kind of smaller, more intimate pieces?
The hanger specifically, or just the smaller scale work?
Yeah, both. The hanger is a smaller scale work, but also it's your decision to incorporate text also with the object.
So one day I was on like a YouTube like spiral where you just keep like clicking like the suggested video and then it click again and then it takes you completely off track of what you were originally watching. And there was this PSA from the 70s, a British PSA, where it looked like any moment it could turn to porn. Like, it was very touch and go. I'm like, I don't know where this is headed, but I'm interested. And so it was, the beginning is like a guy like in bed with his lady friend, and you know, I guess he realizes like he doesn't have a condom on hand, and so then he's like searching like the city to find an open convenience store to get a condom, and then he gets back like his mission was successful. And then the PSA, the tagline was, "There's no need to make an abortion of it," which was like so brutal. Like that, like we went from like 0 to 60, which is true. I mean, and I was just like, that needs to be stitched on a wire hanger. Like that was just like immediate.
Yeah.
And then I just like the format of using text. And there's quite a few of them are about reproductive rights, but then other ones are just funny things or some, you know, sad, traumatic things. So there is a range of what the text is. I studied painting, so I like to start off by saying that while somebody might call me a fiber artist, I took one fiber class when I was in grad school, and it was great, like no complaints. But I could tell that the people in the fiber department thought differently. Their like creative process was just like, they were all about counting stitches and making sure, like doing samples. I never do samples. They were all about like, well, why don't you do a sample of this to see like how it knits up or how it crochets. And I'm somebody that just, because I'm a painter, I just want to get right in and do something.
Yeah.
So the idea of using color and pattern in the text-based work, I was playing with the idea of a slow read, like in painting, like a slow read of a painting. So I wanted to make it more of kind of like a camouflaged text.
Okay.
So it's still like a visual object, but then there is text behind it.
Sure. You know, we have a guest, Warren. He's like, I wish we could see some of the work you're speaking of. And
Sorry, we'll get to it. We got sidetracked.
I know. I always like to start off with like, what the heck have you been doing during the pandemic? It's kind of the same old question. But now we got, you know, about 15 people in the room right now, and let's start sharing the screen.
Okay.
I know we were having a little technical difficulties before we invited everyone to join the conversation, so I'm going to share the screen, and you just let me know when you know, I'm going to advance and so on and so forth. Here we go. Voila. Here we are.
Okay.
So, yeah, let's start here. I have to ensure that it is going to be playing here. Where is my shortcut to play? We'll go ahead and start chatting, Daniela, about this particular slide. I know everyone's seeing what's going on. Here we go. Present.
Yep.
Well.
So like I said, I studied painting. This painting is from grad school. I went to the Savannah College of Art and Design. I am originally from New Jersey, so living in the South was a little bit of a culture shock for me. And I was making work about my gender identity and sexuality and feminism, and people were getting a little, I'll say, annoyed, because there was a lot of detached blue phalluses and blue balls. So I was not, you know, I was exploiting the male form, not in a classical, like, reclining nude. I'm not like painting these idealized reclining nude women. And I don't know, I guess I was offending people. And there was like a little bit of censorship, and I'm not saying like the whole school, and I'm not even saying like the faculty that I was working with directly. They was just like, oh, maybe not hang that in the hallway.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up though, because it is a bit of a culture shock when you're, and I don't know too much about SVA in relationship to, I mean, I know that it's a very skill-based program, and therefore, you leave there with a lot of tools in your toolkit per se to, be able to visually communicate your ideas. However, being in the South and having some of your conceptual interests that you do have, it's not very polite, Daniela.
I know, I was not being polite. And because I come from like a punk rock background, and humor is also very important to me, I was just like nudging some more. I wish I had an image of the painting I did before this, that this was in response to. But somebody had an issue with all the, the blue dicks everywhere.
Yes.
And it made me think of Norman Rockwell quote, if a picture wasn't going very well, I'd put a puppy in it. And then if it still wasn't working, you put a bandage on its foot. And so I painted this like super cute kind of kitsch Lisa Frank-esque puppy dog. And I only made one severed penis. The rest of them are just bones.
Although they still have a type of phallus to them, the testes of sorts.
Right. But I was playing with the cute aspect, and just,
yeah,
you have to have like a little fun, right?
Exactly. And so when you're I'm trying to figure out how to move the slide and like let people in and do this thing. So so moving on, then you're still exploring some of these ideas.
Yeah, I got into a lot of trouble for this piece.
Really?
Because I wore it during an open studio event. And it seems silly. Yeah, like if you're based like in the New York metro area, it's just like you would go to a party and see that. It wouldn't, be a thing.
Right.
But yeah, so I was still compelled to push buttons a little bit. I also, while I was in grad school, wanted to embrace my craft background, because even though I didn't study fibers, like when I was a little girl, like it was a very like internalized gendered thing, that like little girls did crafts, and then men were painters. So I, I painted when I was younger, but it was mostly like, oh, here's this like friendship bracelet kit, or like I learned how to crochet, and I taught myself how to knit.
Right.
And so I started then using that. I abandoned the rectangle of the substrate of traditional painting. And you can click to the next slide. And I started making these kind of crafty assemblage type wall pieces. And this, again, there is a joke in this, coming off the grid. This was a piece of a Ninja Turtles bed sheet that I manipulated. Like if you look closely, they're like those green things. Those are like the Ninja Turtle arms. But the joke of like this embroidery grid, and then this painted swatch on top of it. And there's a pretty graphic like vulva in the middle of it. And then the joke of like coming. And I think like these, I was just entertaining myself.
Right. I mean, and also, I mean, this is very grad school work, right? I mean, this
Yeah.
is, you know, an exploration, experimentation, but you're kind of getting your, you know, teeth sharpened in relationship to some of these ideas. And although very obvious, right? It's like, I think as we move,
Yeah.
you know, forward into your making and practice, I think that there's certainly more subtlety inside some of those, you know, strident feminist moments.
Yeah, like this piece, looking out the kitchen window, there's an implied narrative about it, but it's a collection of like fabric that I bought from a thrift store and this half-made scarf. I think that was probably part of a random bundle, a dish towel, a scoring pad, and then I started to use my crochet skills to create the top of the piece. So I'm actually weaving things, but then I'm incorporating things that I find.
Mm-hmm.
You can go to the next.
I'm working on it.
Oh, okay, sorry.
No, it's okay. It's my trackpad. Boop, 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 boop. Boop, 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 boop. All right, there we go.
And then it like collecting things and being a little bit of a material hoarder was part of my practice. I get really excited when I see colors that are adjacent to each other, but
Mm-hmm.
not like quite right. And so this was really about like playing with the different textures of material and different yellows. And then like knitting and crocheting, and weaving into it, and collaging. I don't sew.
Mm-hmm.
That's I guess a point that I want to make. I have a sewing machine. I almost never use it. Anything that you see that's fabric based, um, it's either crudely stitched together with embroidery thread, or I just use a lot of acrylic medium. Like
Mm-hmm.
I just because I'm insecure about like I'm insecure about my sewing skills, so everything is just covered in plastic.
Danielle, it's like a really it's a nice fuck you to the fiber world.
But I don't want to be that person. But those weren't the ones that I wanted to offend.
um yeah, and so yeah, I'm seeing some of your painting skills come in with some of the colors and other things that you're presenting within the assemblages. And I'm curious, you know, some of this work, it feels very wrinkled or wrought. Talk to me a little bit about that presentation, this unfinished look. I know my professors would have my head on a stick if I.
Well, this piece I made, this was post grad school. This was actually in my first New York solo show at A.I.R gallery.
Very nice.
It, the main fabric of this piece came from a thrift store, and it was a remnant. And like I get so excited when I find remnant fabric, because I love the idea of repurposing something that somebody was going to throw away. And also just having this constraint to work around the shape. I mean, sometimes I do cut them up more, but with this one, this was the pretty much the shape that I had found it in. So
Right.
somebody probably cut a pattern out of that. And I responded to the shape of it. So that is part of the
Mhm.
process
Yeah,
for sure.
definitely. Let me try to move forward here. Oh, there we go. I like these decisions that you have when you're hanging them up on the wall. the the moments of these D rings, as well as the how they're being caught. It's in the moments of the paint also on the fabric. It's really considered, which I appreciate. And then
Thank
again,
you.
just found fabric again in this shape, or did you manipulate this shape?
So this fabric was a what they call a fat quarter.
Oh yeah, I just learned about this.
Yeah, I don't actually know what that means. I just know that those are the squares I like to buy. But yeah, I cut out the shape of it. But what was exciting to like the found aspect of this piece is that that lace that's on top of the like yellow was that felt or whatever. You could see it has almost the same embroidered flower like the flower of the fabric.
Right.
And so that for me that's what was exciting.
And you can kind of tell by the zipper, the scale, and certainly and the hanging apparatus or the pins. So the kind of smaller works, and then you get to oh, this is 2013 again. So is this?
Yeah, so I didn't do a chronological order. I tried to kind of cluster images that made sense to me in a narrative way.
Sure, yeah. Because I mean, this being in 2013, is this when you first started really thinking about the crochet?
Yeah, so I had been crocheting already since I was 16.
Okay.
So something that I just did as a hobby. And then this is when I started to really incorporate it as my art. Um, and I was still in grad school at this time. So I mean, I was still having my fun and making like dick drawings and, pissing people off. But I was also being encouraged to be a little bit more submissive in my messaging, which was a great, it was a great critique. And it's something that like I still consider now. Like, sometimes I'll be blatant with images, and then other times like I'll let them be kind of ambiguous. And so with this piece, I was playing off of Joseph Alber's Homage to the Square. And also my thoughts on gender and how like when I tried to define for myself what it meant for me to be female, which I don't fully ascribe anymore. Like I'm mostly female, but I don't feel like a regular female. Whatever a regular female is supposed to be, I don't know. I just feel like I'm bad at being a female. It's something I'm still working through.
I mean, I think right now those are the conversations we're having about gender conformity and what
Yeah.
society tells us what a femme is, or what society tells us what masc is, and society tells we have to ask ourselves those very questions. I was talking to my 13-year-old daughter about this all week.
Well, yeah,
like,
yesterday was Trans Visibility Day.
Sure was.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were talking a little bit about. She's like, "Well, Mom, if I'm bi, but what's pan? Was it someone just came out and then that little Nas X video and like she's trying to show it to me like
I didn't watch it. I think I'm too old.
It's actually so tame.
Okay.
It's so much tamer than I was expecting. People are so up in arms about it, and it's like this is what people are upset about. Like that lap dance was like 10 seconds. I mean, it was like it was sexy, but it wasn't even like I don't know. People get really hung up on some stuff that I'm just obviously I think it's the gayness that's the problem, right? So, well, also the devil. But anyway, so this back to it's all relative.
Yeah. So I was thinking about like the gender fluidity and the shifting of feeling more masculine or more feminine, and how it's somewhat contextual. because if I had to like pinpoint things of like, well, a female is this, this, and this, like those definitions were all like really arbitrary. And I don't have a good detail image of this piece, but this rectangle on the left is indented a little bit, and then on the right there's kind of like a tiny little nub coming out. So it's like this idea, and I know it's really juvenile, the idea of like an innie or an outie. But I was just exploring, and I'm still exploring my gender. But if you click on the next, this is a more
there we go. Prom date.
So I wanted to make friends for myself. I was very lonely in grad school, and I had great friends there, some of whom are on this call right now. So I'm not trying to insult them, but from like a relationship perspective, I was extremely lonely. And so I made this one figure that reads more feminine, that was my exact height, and then this other one that's sort of more masculine, but they both have phalluses. The female one is penetrating the man. They're stuck together literally just from the tension of like sticking like one crochet into the other. And then when I was done with it, I'm like, this looks like a prom picture.
Yeah, this piece is really compelling to me as well. I appreciate your choice of these PVC pipes and how you're, creating such a rectangular object, but it's also potentially, when you think crochet, you think blanket. So, but having it become both, front and back in the work, and having it, tightly stretched around the, I think that this really interesting decisions. What was that aha moment that you had? Was like, I can use PVC pipes and make a stand, or like what inspired you?
I think it might have been Todd Schroeder in my one of my professors in grad school, who suggested it. That's another thing I don't do is like carpentry stuff, like measuring, like anything that's like exact or has to use big power tools, I'm not good with. And so I was really intimidated, but then when he explained it, it's sort of like putting it together like Tinker Toys. I'm like, oh, this is craft. I know how to craft.
Sure.
Yeah. But then it was just like a nice joke also about using plumbing supplies.
Yeah.
Talking about sexuality.
So one of the reasons why I was excited to ask about that, just muting here. Yeah, one of the reasons why I'm excited to ask about that is just that decision particularly was interesting for this piece. And the close-up shot here is also really compelling, and then the colors that you're choosing for both of the characters also really interesting.
Thank you. Yeah, I try to choose slightly unexpected colors. Like this piece, again, going back to like Joseph Alber's homage to the square, both pieces have the same colors of yarn, just used in different degrees. And the way that I've draped them and the fabric that I put down on the floor and the boots makes it so that one sort of reads more masculine and the other one sort of reads more feminine, but it's only because they're next to each other that you get that, because I would think even if you pulled that one on the right away from the other one, it's still pretty feminine looking.
Mm-hmm.
But when I found the boots, well, the boots on the right were my boyfriend's work boots, that he literally, like, his boss told them that he's not allowed to wear them to work anymore because they were falling apart. I'm like, oh, I'll use them. And then I was again at a thrift store and I saw like those fake Timberland stiletto heel boots. And for me, like, that says so much about gender, like all in one, like the performative aspect. Like you can't work in those boots. In stilettos. So yeah, that's and I like, names are titles of work are really important to me. So I like the tongue twister of like the gestures, like gestures as in painting or drawing, and then a court jester. And also how these two, like side by side, they look like they're like sitting on thrones. And those legs are only being held up by the tension of the tapestry hung from the back wall. And these were displayed in window boxes inside the Gateway Center at Newark, through Project for Empty Space. So nobody was going to like touch them. But if they had to be displayed in a gallery where they're not behind glass, it's they're pretty fragile. It was a balancing act just to install them.
Oh, I believe it.
Yeah.
You're very crafty decision to use the metal key rings as those circular anchor points. They're really, it's really interestingly elegant, the way that you place the three almost, queen-like.
Thank you.
Royal of sorts with a crown. And yeah, it's nice to see the progression also with the shoes and it kind of, anthropomorphizing the actual objects as sculptures. And here again, moving away from the PVC pipe, you've got these wonderful stanchions. And then what is it? Is that hung also from the ceiling then? Is
suspended?
Okay.
That was suspended. And then the legs are only held up by the tension through the tapestry. Luckily, this one was slightly less precarious, so it was able to be shown out in the open with people walking around it. But I wanted to, give this impression of this like object person that doesn't know if they're coming or going, and so like the legs are being pulled in separate directions.
The color palette on this piece is really attractive to me.
Thank you.
I suppose especially against that kind of downtrodden ceramic glazed wall, whatever that is in the background. It looks like it's where was this exhibited?
That was in the Pfizer building in Brooklyn. Okay. Yeah, that was like a pop-up show.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Was that through satellite or was it just did you do it voluntarily or did you go through Shashama or like what
it was through at the time they called themselves Real Artway. No, that's scratch that. That's my next show. Something oh my God, I can't remember.
Oh, it's okay. I was just curious because
Re-show, maybe that's what it was.
Okay.
I don't think they're doing shows no one was doing shows anymore in the Pfizer building during the pandemic, but I think pre-pandemic they had transitioned to doing something else. They run the Hall Gallery. It was like U-Haul, and then because of I like copyright trademark names. They called it Hall Gallery, and they do something with shipping containers, I think.
Oh, cool.
I'm sorry, I can't speak on that
Oh,
more.
no worries. It's my own personal curiosity.
Yeah.
Accessing abandoned space like the Pfizer building, not that it was abandoned, but activating an abandoned or barely used space is one of my favorite things to do. So
Mm-hmm.
I was asking for pure self.
Yeah, I mean, they did it legally, like they had permission. It wasn't they weren't going rogue or anything.
Right.
Um
Oh yeah, that's even better. And this piece, is also the color palette here is really so considered, and the muted tones just work so well with the type of crocheting that you're doing to really feel this piece both in its opaque areas and that really tightness, and then to have it breathe a little bit with some of those more open-ended crochet techniques. This is really gorgeous. How did
thank
you
you.
yeah talk a little bit about, well, its title, Rusty Apparitions, I'm assuming is coming from its hue or color.
Yeah.
uh
Yeah, the color, and also like apparitions, like it's ghost like.
sure.
I wanted something, because if you go back to like the beginning crochet pieces, everything was woven really tight and like heavy acrylic yarn. And I got my hands on this beautiful silk mohair, and
Hmm.
it was so thin and fragile and beautiful, that I wanted to use it and play with that transparency. Um, and thinking about like emotional traumas, how you want to be able to tell your story, but then you don't necessarily want the attention that your story gets. And so this piece is oscillating between really wanting to be seen and really wanting to hide.
That's yes, that's thoughtful. I can see that in the visual language that you're using, and certainly how it's stretched
Mm-hmm.
and placed in the space. So you're pretty much forced to walk around it. And then
Yeah.
it also, although I suspect is stretched flat, it also has kind of a bosom like feeling, or like this vex feeling to the actual motif of the actual crocheting. It gives it that convex feeling. And
Yeah, and that was just from the process. I don't plan these things out. Like I'll plan out my
mm,
color palette, but then I'm ready to like abandon that plan at any time, like as I'm working. And it came out of a necessity, because the middle of it, the way that it was sagging, it it was just not hanging right. And so then I just like yanked it, and like heavily, like you could see the stitch in the middle that's like bringing that bosom up, like you said, or it could be like a butt, or I mean, I think like when you're using these materials, it's just so easy to go towards those like bodily forms.
absolutely.
um
Well, it just affirms the femininity
yeah.
in them as well, I
Yeah.
think. um see if I can I'm gonna get better at this. Oh, here we have a little interaction.
Yeah, the detail shot. That's my friend Lisa. And then actually in the back, who's taking a picture from the back, is Shoshana Weinberg.
Yeah. Sorry.
um yeah, it was just this, this was the opening of my show. And I actually think it was my boyfriend who suggested to stage this picture. And it worked out so well because it just activated it in like a dentata kind of
Yeah, truly.
scary. And I love it so much.
Mhm. Oh, a thirst
Um,
trap.
so I didn't want to get too complacent in the way that I was making these pieces. And I would try different, like the previous piece was very like open woven, lacy. I started incorporating more knitting. So this piece has like knitting, crochet, Tunisian crochet, which is sort of like when you knit with a crochet hook. But then the center of it is all needle tatted. And I taught myself, it's a lace making technique that I taught myself from YouTube. And that's something else that's I just want to shout out to like the craft community in general. Is their skill sharing and so open, to teach other people like how to do things. And when I was younger, we didn't have YouTube, so I had to like figure out how to crochet and knit on my own. So I'm just like, I'm grateful for what like technology can offer. It's not, there's a lot of bad stuff on the internet, but there's a lot of good stuff also. So this piece is called Thirst Trap. And it was something that I found humorous. I had that like swatch that's around the bottle on the floor as like a throwaway piece that just didn't work. And I'm like, oh, well, the colors sort of match what I'm making over here. And then I thought like, oh, it's like a bear trap, but like with your vagina. It's just like, there are really serious issues like in my work, but I need to counter it with humor because I couldn't get through it otherwise.
Yeah, I can understand that. In relationship to the topic too, I hearing you say, I didn't have YouTube when I was younger, you had to use books or whatever.
Yep. You had to go to the library.
Just a quick anecdote about that is I worked in higher education for 20 plus years, and over the course of the time, the generations of students became more and more digitally savvy, right? Because they were digital natives, and I was this digital immigrant, as it's been called. And
that's a good term.
The Gen Xer. But yeah, and I started noticing that there would be students, and this was for entry to like admissions into certain schools, and I started noticing that without any art training at all, like no AP art, no IB art, students were starting to create these elaborate animations, videos. Their photography skills were just off the charts, and we were actually able to admit them into colleges of art and design based on purely their own learning from YouTube how to do these things. And it's really revolutionized, and obviously this is a topic for another day, but it really has revolutionized the way education happens. I mean, clearly, students are doing the Zoom school now, and watching my daughter be, on all these YouTube tutorials, whether it's on Angela Davis or, a lot of the history stuff. But anyway, just food for thought, because that idea of the sharing knowledge, skill sharing, I think that, yes, before, the women's circle, sitting around doing the, talking or meditating while you're crafting with friends, it's a real thing. And this type of work really lends to that, which I don't know, a lot of folks think craft is a dirty word, and I guess we addressed it early on, but it's such an important part of building skills as makers.
Yeah.
Anyway, we talk about that forever, I'm sure.
So yeah, I wanted to include the detail shot of that, just to.
So slowly, okay, yeah.
I mean, this process takes forever.
Wow.
And that's just all like a series of like tiny little knots wrapped around a long, thin needle, like a sewing needle, but long. And then wrapping it through like in circles and arches and then connecting them.
And yeah, there's so many unique design motifs here. And this is my naivete, I really don't know. My grandmother used to crochet, but I never picked it up. Are there certain names there must be to each one of these styles of the loop-de-loop to the filigree to the, I don't know.
Mhm.
I mean,
Well, the loop-de-loop is specific to the needle tatting, but then if you're looking at this image specifically where you get to the darker brown, that is
yeah.
crochet.
Uh,
There probably are names to these things,
mhm.
but because I'm coming at it from a home crafter and not like a fibers degree, I never learned the names of the patterns. I mean, there's it like to follow a pattern, like you need to know what like a double crochet looks like and a half double crochet or a single crochet, but then putting those simple stitches together in different ways is what creates the patterns.
Mhm,
um
mhm. Yeah, it's so delicate as it comes to center. And I'm seeing, are those little like Swarovski crystals or something? You're like,
yeah, I had these little beads. I wanted to add like some bling, but from far away you don't even notice them, which to me that's even better. Like when you get up close, like when you look at a regular painting and there's like details that you see up close that aren't apparent far away, it just makes the work more interesting. So to me it's like a payoff if you want to get up close to it.
well, absolutely. I mean, well, not only the crystals, but also the extreme detail and um, the delicacy in it also, I think, draws your viewer in. Aha, here we go.
Here are the hangers that we
Starting
spoke
with
about in the beginning.
uh-huh.
Since we already talked about like this series, we can kind of go through these like really quick. Like this one's obviously about reproductive rights. This
Right.
one is Meet Me in the Back Alley, which is um, this piece was like a funny thought I had, that if I had to create my fake origin story for my artwork, um, like the idea of like Louise Bourgeois getting together with Rodney Dangerfield just really tickled my fancy. And then this is on a baby hanger, so it's smaller than the other hangers.
Mm. So when you're wrapping these hangers, well, I like that. Oh, here, this isn't quite as, confined to the hanger, which I appreciate.
Well, it is. I just kind of I pulled it and opened it up.
Yes,
Yeah. And
yes.
then I let because I think this was like a cloth napkin. So I let the rectangularness hang off the bottom of it. But yeah, the way that I'm wrapping these is, like I said, I don't sew, so it's a lot of acrylic medium.
Oh, right on. So it's got a stiff feeling to
There's
it.
this, not to the whole thing, but just to the edging.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, this is something that my friend Madeline said. I don't remember where I think we were maybe at an art opening, and I don't even remember who we were talking about, but she, she said that this person was excited to see me because I gave him a titty hug, whatever that means. And uh the
You were putting
fabric
it with me.
the fabric to me just like reeks of Florida, and that's where she lives, so I'll always associate this hanger with her.
Mhm. And there's a handful of these on Artfare that, and they're
Mm-hmm.
like priced at 300, they're really reasonably priced.
Yeah, I wanted
I
something that was accessible to people,
Yeah.
because then I'm making this installation work, which is a lot harder to
Right.
display and collect.
And this is like such an athletic feeling to it, besides just the sneakers that are on it. It really is really massively alluding to, this stretched form, as you say, stretched. And when you're working with these, I know that they're very labored, and you're very focused, and stuff takes a lot of time. What would be the price point of a work like this?
Oh,
Like a 2019. Is this a Wassaic?
it is at Wassaic.
I can't say.
um so like we were talking about earlier about like shifting studio spaces, right? At this point, like in 2019, I still had my studio, but I didn't have these high ceilings, and I was also not utilizing my studio that much at all, because of like a tragic accident that happened to my boyfriend, and he was rendered in a minimally conscious state, and he was at a healthcare facility. And so this piece was, a lot of it was made just sitting next to his bed, and so I didn't get to see it fully like installed and see what I made until I got to Wassaic for an artist residency.
Wow.
So this piece has not been in a show, which is why I can't even think of like a price point for it.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. I'm just so sorry to hear about your boyfriend, and I know that must have been really tough. Um, this piece feels so uniquely. I mean, I guess maybe it's the palette, but also
Yeah.
this kind of dripping
Yeah.
the feeling that's coming off of the sculpture, or the work itself.
Yeah.
Um, and so you also made this at Wassaic, or were you still at
Um,
the hospital?
that again was like something that I had, I have so much stuff that's always in progress.
Gotcha.
Um, that like when I finally do get to a residency, like I'm ready to work. um, so I'll finish these pieces while I'm on a residency, which is what happened with this piece. And then the title, like Leaky Mascara, is about like me mourning they call it an ambiguous loss, when somebody hasn't like fully passed over yet. Um, and so these like tendrils that are coming down are like faux chenille yarn, and there's beads attached to it, and I included like his initials, like those beads that have like the letters on it, and you'd make friendship bracelets. So yeah, this is when I started to incorporate him more into the work.
Yeah. Well, this piece does have, um, I suppose, it's just an intuitive sorrow to it, not only because of the heaviness, the weight, the color, but
It
that,
has like a Gothic church kind of vibe to it too.
yes.
Yeah.
And I just want to let you know that we're moving, and we've got about 7 minutes left, and I know that we want to talk about your solo show coming up.
Yes.
That's going to be in Connecticut, but this, certainly let's address, some of these other works. They're really, growing and becoming even more painterly, these
Yeah.
assemblages.
Um,
Um,
so when we had spoken like in our little pre-interview the other day, I said like one of the like silver linings of when something so traumatic happens in your life, like in your whole like future kind of, or the future that you thought you were going to have just goes to shit. Pardon my French.
mhm.
It just freed me in a way that I didn't expect. And I wanted to get back to making more like paintings, with fabric and acrylic paint and objects. Uh, and so like I didn't have like the same kind of hangups that I had previously. I just, I started making what I wanted to make. And this one I started the beginning of 2020, pre-pandemic, but it was, I called it growth because it was literally, it developed over time. I would like work on it a little bit and slowly add to it, and then go, spend time at the healthcare facility. And it just gave me a reason to like wake up in the morning and push myself to still make things.
Yeah, I hear that. And the placement on this just cerulean blue, I suppose it would be called, wall, is really choice. Did you?
That was this wall that's behind me before I painted it.
Okay.
Because I didn't, I had given up my studio. I didn't, I was making this in my basement with like a drop ceiling, low walls. I couldn't really photograph it. And so I just, when I decided it was done, I brought it upstairs to my bedroom and just cleared everything out. And, you kind of, sometimes you just have to make do with what's available. But yeah, it was a nice color. I needed a change.
I get it.
Yeah. But yeah, if you want, like, we can kind of just jump through these. These
Yeah.
were like the smaller works that I said, I started making during the pandemic.
And this, I've seen, this is on Artfare.
That's on Artfare, yeah.
Really?
This one's about probably like 24 by 24, maybe it's a little bit smaller.
This 24 by 24. Oh gosh, I thought it was smaller than that. That's a good size.
Yeah, I mean, when I think small, like,
Yeah, you're like it's 2 feet by 2 feet. Yeah, not 1 inch by 1 inch. Yeah.
I mean, this one's probably like 15 by 15 inches.
I like the way you're incorporating some of the crochet elements,
Mhm.
and also it really has such a fantastic collage, um, not just applique and montage, a considerate collage feeling to this squidding. I really like that one. Ooh, is that on?
Thank you.
I can't remember.
I don't know if that one's on Artfare.
That's good.
If it's not, then I'll add it.
Someone's gonna snatch it before.
um, I included that the intergalactic mustache rides. I included that one just to say that, like, some of those smaller pieces, they were brightly colored. They were almost like an escapism for me, because I was working on this giant piece that's on the screen now at the same time. And so this is all about Jesse's passing. The picture was taken when I was at ChaNorth in September of 2020. It's grown since then. And I'm just transitioning into a new studio space, to be able to, like, really, like, unfurl it and work on it more. So this is the best picture I have of it so far.
Wow. Oh my gosh, Daniela. So this work is just, I suppose, then an ongoing work in progress until you install it this summer. Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, it's by hell or high water, it needs to be finished by July.
Yeah.
um but I think I'll probably, like, take a break. Like, after this piece is finished, I'll probably take a little bit of a break from making a giant piece. But I know that my grieving process is not anywhere near over if it ever ends. So there'll be more work about him, I'm sure.
Of course, of
Yeah.
course. That type of um, tragedy can, certainly always does, inform, I think, a practice that is as meditative and deliberate as yours. It's obviously your practice is highly productive, even though it's only, one object, right? That you're able to focus on just that one piece. And in the space that you'll be showing this in Connecticut, if I remember correctly,
Yeah.
then are you and have you had a site visit and are considering, like, its form once there, or will the form be similar to this in a corner, or I basically thinking about install, like how will you install it any differently?
Yeah, I think, like, those decisions will probably have to happen the week of, but I'm trying to get it to a point where I feel like it'll hang to my satisfaction, like the weight of it, it will hit the floor in the right way. and then, as I get closer to install, I'll think about like what kind of apparatus to like attach it to the walls or the ceiling. And I'll probably like have extra swatches of crochet on hand to, if that I could stitch onto it if it needs it. But yeah, that's sort of I guess the crux of my work is like nothing ever really gets finished until there's a show, like until there's like a hard deadline that like you just need to get it together and make it work. There's pieces that I've been working on and off for years that I've like unraveled and redone and cut up, and so until they've like made their home in an exhibition space, it's pretty fair game.
No, I know that I just wanted you to talk about, there are no casseroles really quickly, but I'm going to stop sharing right now so I can
Okay.
get to, oops, that's not what I want. I want to stop sharing. Come on. Boom. There we go.
Yeah, the title of the show is There Were No Casseroles, because Jesse died in the middle of pandemic. I wasn't able to be by his side at his healthcare facility when it happened.
Sorry, I can't. It just breaks my heart. It's so hard.
Yeah, so there was no like funeral, there was no gathering there, none of the usual things that you would do to comfort with such like an important loss in your life. So my hope is that this exhibition with the giant piece about his death is going to be like the funeral that I didn't get to have, because it'll just be a mark in time to acknowledge. I also know that like so many people have lost loved ones during the pandemic, whether it was COVID or not. Because I know that some people passed who it wasn't the virus, but because of the virus, there was no funerals for them or memorial services. And so I'm hoping that, it'll be a healing experience, not just for myself, but for other people, to acknowledge like their losses. So again, I mean, getting back to like the humor thing, like calling it There Were No Casseroles is sort of a joke about like, I'm Italian, and so everything is like commemorated with food. My project that I'm working on in conjunction with that is a book. I'm asking people to submit recipes for comfort, whether that's an actual recipe that you can cook, or like a creative interpretation of that prompt. I'm friends with a few writers, and so some friends have contributed poems to the book. So anybody that's like watching, there's a link on my Instagram profile that'll take you to a Google form to fill out if you wanted to participate.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Daniela. It's just been great to see more of your work and kind of get the ins and outs from that beginning area at Savannah, and and really hear about your process and talk a little bit about these ideas and humor and finding the light in that gravity, and just thank you everyone for being here, and I'm just really glad to have talked to you, and I really hope to meet you in person one day.
Yeah.
Soon.
I got my first shot. I'm waiting on my second shot, so then I'll really be out.
Nice. Well, best of luck to you, and keep those fingers moving for that crochet. No idle hands, right?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, thank you so much. If anyone missed any of the conversation, I'll have it once it's in the cloud. I'll download and put it back, put it on our Artfare YouTube channel. But again, thanks everyone, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Bye, Daniela.
Bye.
Ciao.